Right then, back in the groove after the international break. Kind of, because while Celtic are still a few days away from returning to action, the world of football hasn't exactly stopped spinning. And let's be honest, after a few days of mental breather and staying away from all things hoops, it's good to catch up and dive right back in. Scotland fans will be feeling cautiously optimistic after last night's win over Belarus. A decent enough performance, although far from perfect, it put Steve Clarke's men in a solid position heading into the final stretch of the World Cup qualifiers. 10 points out of a possible 12 is a strong return, and while we've technically secured at least a playoff spot, there's still that dream, however fragile, of automatic qualification. To make it happen, a draw away to Greece and a home win over Denmark would be ideal, though looking at the way we're playing, it might be asking a bit much. Still, 6 points from 6 during this break, and that's all you can really ask. Performance-wise? Not exactly breathtaking, but results count. From a Celtic perspective, Anthony Ralston got the nod at right back again, and he had what you'd call a mixed bag. Some decent link-up play going forward, particularly when combining with Ben Gannon, who's looking like one of those talents you kind of wish never slipped through our fingers. Defensively, though, Ralston had some shaky moments. Later in the match, Kieran Tierney came on to replace him for the final 20 minutes and looked more composed. That's encouraging. Tierney had already put in a solid shift in the previous game against Greece, and if he's getting sharper, that can only be a boost. Elsewhere in the Celtic squad, Kasper Schmeichel kept busy for Denmark, playing both games this break. They cruised past Belarus 6-0 and then handled Greece with a 3-1 win. What's interesting is Schmeichel wore the captain's armband against Greece, stepping in for the suspended Højbjerg. Honestly, a lot of people have been scratching their heads about why Højbjerg's even the captain when Schmeichel's got far more international experience. Either way, the veteran keeper had a solid showing despite being booked during a bit of a flashpoint with a Greek attacker who was trying to retrieve the ball quickly after scoring. That competitive fire is still there, and to be fair, he couldn't have done much about the goal itself. A quality finish from Soles, a name that might ring a bell if you remember Club Brugge's recent European run. The other keeper we had out on international duty was Sinisalo with Finland. Now, he got a rare start due to Lukas Radecki's injury. Played the first match, a win against Lithuania, but looked a bit suspect on the goal they conceded. He got a hand to it, but couldn't keep it out. Not a howler, but not convincing either. He didn't feature in the next match, a heavy 4-0 defeat to the Netherlands, so it's hard to gauge where he stands. I still rate him. He's got solid fundamentals, but he'll need to clean up the small mistakes if he wants to push for more minutes, especially when you consider how scrutinized Schmeichel would be if he made those same errors. Now, some less positive news regarding Liam Scales. He missed Ireland's match against Portugal due to a family bereavement, and while there was hope he'd return for the Armenia fixture, that's now off the table. The FAI confirmed he won't be back in time. Obviously, thoughts are with him, and fingers crossed he'll be ready and well for club duties when the team regroups. Cameron Carter-Vickers, meanwhile, is still with the U.S. squad but didn't feature in their draw with Ecuador. They're playing Australia midweek, so maybe he'll get some game time then, but it's clear he's not exactly top of the pecking order in the eyes of the national team staff. For Celtic, that's not necessarily bad news. Less travel, less fatigue, and more time to rest. Same goes for Benjamin Negron with Sweden. Another unused sub as Sweden's qualifying campaign continues to falter. 1 point from 9. Ouch. They lost to Switzerland and face Kosovo next, so we'll see if Negron gets any minutes there. Speaking of Negron, he did a press conference back in Sweden. I went down a rabbit hole translating it, only to find that he didn't really say anything groundbreaking. Just a bit of frustration about not playing more, but otherwise seemed upbeat. Probably not the worst thing from a Celtic angle that these guys aren't burning energy in meaningless games. Now let's talk injuries, because what would an international break be without a bit of fitness drama? Sebastian Tank missed Tunisia's match against São Tomé and Príncipe with a reported thigh issue. The local press says it's nothing serious and suggested he might play in the second half of their next game against Namibia. So, that'll be something to keep an eye on. If he does get on the pitch, maybe it's just a minor precaution. If not, alarm bells start ringing. Because let's be honest, Tank has easily been our most exciting attacker this season. Losing him, even for one game, would be a blow. And then there's Daizen Maeda. He made Japan's squad for the Paraguay match, but didn't get off the bench. He's since been ruled out of the Brazil fixture with what's being described as tightness in his left leg, or maybe his left foot, depending on who you ask. Either way, it's another cloud hanging over our attack. Maeda hasn't been hitting the heights of last season, but he's still a crucial piece when fit and firing. Hopefully, again, this is all just precautionary. On a brighter note, Marcelo Serra had himself a decent international break. Not only did he feature for Uruguay in their friendly against the Dominican Republic, he captained the team. Yes, it was a much-changed Uruguay side with most of the big names sitting out, but still, captain of your country, even in a friendly, is a massive achievement. They've got another game against Uzbekistan coming up, so we'll see if he keeps the armband or gets some more minutes. Then there's young Kobe Donovan. He played the first half for Scotland's under-21s in their absolute demolition of Gibraltar, 12-0. That's not a typo. 12. Donovan chipped in with a couple of assists, playing off the right-hand side and whipping in some lovely low crosses. More Kieran Tierney than Anthony Ralston, which is a bit of a surprise, but a welcome one. That match was at Dens Park too, where Celtic head this weekend, so it's almost like a warm-up for him. Whether he starts or not will probably depend on how he comes through their next game away to Azerbaijan, which is a bit of a trek, but still, promising signs from the youngster. All right, before I wrap this first bit up, let's touch on the B team. Not the best outing for them in the Challenge Cup, going down 5-3 to East Fife on Friday night. Scoreline flattered us, to be honest. East Fife were all over them, could have easily had 7 or 8. What made this match noteworthy was the debut of Jumai Simpson-Pusey. Yes, the same lad who's played Champions League football for Manchester City. You'd think he'd stand out a mile at this level, but based on the highlights? Not really. Looked a bit weak in the air, was caught out for one of the goals, and generally didn't impose himself the way you'd expect. Of course, it was his first game in months. He's probably shaking off rust, and playing at Bayview Stadium is worlds apart from the Etihad. Still, you want to see more from a player with that pedigree. There's word that City have no plans to recall him and are expecting him to get more game time now that he's featured for the B team. So maybe there's a path forward there. But for now, he looks a long way off the first-team picture. Callum Osman was also in the lineup, hit the post at one point, but similarly, didn't leave a massive impression. Worth noting, though, that Celtic B is essentially a reset team this season. A lot of regulars have gone out on loan, and it's mostly a new group figuring things out. Still, you'd expect the more experienced names to make their mark in these kinds of matches. Now shifting gears a bit, we had some contrasting fortunes across the rest of the Celtic family over the weekend. Starting with the women's team, and fair play to them, they absolutely demolished Motherwell by 7-1 in the SWPL. That result was more than just a routine win, it was a real statement. Morgan Cross and Celia Barclay's none both bagged braces, and the performance from start to finish was sharp, clinical, and relentless. Definitely one of the most complete displays from the women's side this season, and it couldn't have come at a better time. After a couple of shaky performances earlier in the campaign, you get the sense that this could be a bit of a turning point. Confidence flowing, goals coming from different areas, and a sense of cohesion that had been missing in parts. If they can keep this up, they'll be right in the thick of the title conversation. Obviously, it's still early doors, but a result like that sends a message, and a pretty loud one at that. Unfortunately, things weren't quite as rosy for Celtic B. Their 5-3 defeat to East Fife was tough to watch, especially considering the way the game unfolded. As I mentioned earlier, the scoreline made it look like a close match, but it really wasn't. East Fife were on top from the start, and although we managed to take the lead and even go ahead again at 2-1, it never really felt like we were in control. The defending was shaky, the midfield looked disjointed, and apart from a few bright moments from Ben Summers, there wasn't much to take away from it. What stood out most, or maybe what didn't stand out enough, was the performance of Jumai Simpson-Pusey. For a player who's been on the books at Manchester City and has actual Champions League experience, the expectation is naturally high. But on this showing, he looked well off it. Weak in aerial duels, slow to react, and caught in no man's land a couple of times. You can chalk it up to rust, and maybe he's still finding his feet, but if we're being honest, you'd have hoped to see him dominate a match at this level. Now, to be fair, it is his first proper outing in quite a while, and the Challenge Cup is a strange competition, especially when it throws young academy players up against hardened professionals in lower league Scottish sides. It's not always an easy watch, and you've got to have a bit of patience. Still, it feels like there's a mountain to climb before he's even near the first-team conversation. The game also featured Callum Osman, who hit the woodwork at one point, but again, didn't leave much of a mark. These Challenge Cup games are often used to get minutes into legs and see how fringe players cope with a bit of physicality and tempo. But if this match was any kind of audition, there won't be many knocking on Brendan Rodgers' door just yet. That said, credit to East Fife. They were organized, aggressive, and fully deserved the win. While all this was going on, Celtic were also involved in a different kind of match altogether, the Wim Jansen Cup, a Legends game played in Rotterdam against Feyenoord. And if you thought Legends matches were all about nostalgia and friendly vibes, think again. Because Scott Brown managed to get himself sent off. Yes, really, in a charity match. To be fair to Bruni, it wasn't exactly a moment of madness. He flew into a brilliant sliding challenge to prevent what looked like a certain goal, got the ball cleanly, maybe a bit of the man too, but it was definitely a proper tackle. The referee pointed to the spot, Brown lost the head a bit, and after some heated words, the red card came out. A straight one, for dissent. You really have to laugh. Even in a Legends game, he still got that fire. Barry Robson was raging on the sidelines too. It just goes to show, some players never switch off. They're wired to compete, even when the match technically doesn't mean anything. Lucas Salua ended up saving the resulting penalty, so it all came to nothing in the end, but we couldn't find an equalizer and Feyenoord took the win. Still, the main takeaway is that the old guard still care, probably too much, in some cases. Meanwhile, on the training front, good news regarding Alistair Johnston. He was spotted enjoying a bit of downtime in Erin, playing a round of golf with his dog in tow. Not a bad way to recharge. More importantly, he's set to return to training this week at Lennoxtown and could be available for the Dundee match on Sunday. That's a big boost, especially with some of the question marks surrounding our attacking players. One player who might find himself in the starting 11 sooner than expected is Mikey Johnston's replacement, Michel-Ange Balikwisha. Now, there was a video interview with him that dropped on Celtic TV over the weekend. What was interesting about it was that it was conducted entirely in French, with English subtitles. That might not seem like a big deal, but his very first interview at the club, just weeks ago, was in fluent English. So you'd wonder why the switch back to French. Possibly just a matter of comfort, or maybe he wanted to express himself more naturally. Either way, it was a bit curious. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. In a move that's left the Scottish Premiership buzzing, Celtic have reportedly pulled off a shock signing, bringing in young striker Evan Ferguson. The news broke quietly yesterday, but it's already sending ripples through fans and pundits alike, with tongues wagging over what this could mean for the boys' attacking setup. Ferguson, who has been turning heads with his clinical finishing and sharp movement up front, is said to have been the subject of interest from several clubs across Europe. Yet, it appears Celtic have beaten them to the punch, securing the services of a player many believe could be the next big thing in Irish football. Sources close to the club suggest negotiations were swift, and Ferguson's arrival at Parkhead could be as early as next week. Supporters are already speculating about how manager Ange Postecoglou might integrate the 19-year-old into the squad. Will he slot straight into the starting 11, or is he being groomed for a gradual introduction to Scottish football? Either way, the chatter among the terraces has been relentless. Social media has erupted with excitement, memes, and predictions, with fans dreaming of Ferguson leading the line alongside established Celtic stars. Rumors indicate that the deal might include a substantial development plan, signaling Celtic's intent not just to strengthen immediately, but to invest in the future. Some insiders even hint at a possible cameo in the Champions League fixtures, giving Ferguson a stage to show off his talent on the continental scene. Naturally, rival clubs are keeping a keen eye on this development, wondering if Celtic have managed to snatch a rising star before he fully hits the big leagues. Whether this signing turns out to be a masterstroke or a quiet gamble remains to be seen, but for now, the whispers around Glasgow are deafening. Ferguson's name is on every supporter's lips, and one thing's for sure. Celtic have certainly given the Premiership something to talk about. As the summer transfer window unfolds, all eyes will be on Parkhead, waiting to see if this young striker can live up to the mounting hype. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.